Welcome back to Eurofootball Daily, where for today's 10, we're taking a look at some players and teams who have suffered a fall from grace. Let's go. 10. Deportivo La Coruña. Over the course of the 21st century, Deportivo La Coruña have gone from being one of Spain's biggest clubs to nothing more than an afterthought. In the year 2000, the club would win La Liga for the only time in their history, and 2 years later won the 100th Copa del Rey while still maintaining a top 2 spot in the league. And then in 2004, they lost to eventual champions Porto in the Champions League semi-final. But just 20 years after their crowning glory, Depor will be dropping down to the third tier of Spanish football, a level they've only played at for 2 seasons, the most recent being back in 1981. Club president Augusto César Lendoro reined in the spending in the mid-noughties, meaning players like Rivaldo and Roy Mackay were no longer attainable. Relegation followed in 2011 and the administrators were called in 2013. Since then, the issues have all stemmed from upstairs. Boardroom infighting overshadowed a more financially stable club, and Depor were relegated again in 2018, but failed to bounce back to La Liga. Then this season saw the unthinkable, a drop to the Segunda B, where 80 teams battle it out for just 4 promotion spots. They could be stuck there for a while. 9. Adil Rami. Born on the French island of Corsica, Adil Rami joined Lille at the age of 21, before going on to play for European giants Valencia, AC Milan and Sevilla. In 2018, the centre-back could even add World Cup winner to his list of honours. Despite not playing a minute in France's triumph, his teammates, including Antoine Griezmann and boss Didier Deschamps, would rub his moustache for a bit of good luck. But since that high, it's all been downhill for the now 34-year-old. In August 2019, weeks after his split with model Pamela Anderson, yeah, that was a thing, Rami was left out of Marseille's opening day squad. It had been claimed that he had missed a training session due to injury, but instead he was off recording an episode of French TV game show Fort Boyard, mud wrestling and running in oversized hamster wheels. Ultimately, this got Rami the sack at Marseille for gross misconduct, and in the 12 months since, his career is yet to get started again. He made just a handful of appearances for Fenerbahce before being released from there in February, before signing for Russian side PFC Sochi, leaving them in May without kicking a ball for the club. 8. Pro Vercelli. Quite possibly the most successful football team you've never heard of, only 4 sides have won more Italian football titles than the 7 Pro Vercelli have. The club were founded in 1903 and won their 7 titles in a 15-year period between 1907 and 1922, with World War I ruling out any competition in 4 of those years. A level of dominance only matched by modern-day Juventus, Pro Vercelli even contributed 9 of the 11 players to the first ever Italian national team in 1910, whilst a certain Silvio Piola would also get his breakthrough at the club. The striker scored 51 goals in 127 matches for the club, on his way to becoming the top scorer in the Italian top tier, with 274 goals for Juve and Lazio as well, a number only Francesco Totti has got close to. But slowly they dropped down the divisions, and for the most part Pro Vercelli have hovered between the 4th and 5th tiers in Italy. They did make a brief return to Serie B in 2012, although they went straight back down. Currently settled in Serie C, they are now managed by former Milan and Parma striker Alberto Gilardino, with an eye of one day making it back to the big time. 7. George Best. In at 7 is the player who made the shirt number his own. George Best was football's first celebrity, and is often believed that his lifestyle started to get in the way of his career. This could be seen by the Northern Irishman first announcing his retirement at the age of 26 in 1972, despite being Manchester United's top scorer for each of the previous 4 seasons. Convinced to stay on, it's clear his heart was no longer in the game, scoring just 8 goals over the next 2 years. Ultimately, he was as well known for his alcoholism as his football, and the 1968 Ballon d'Or winner chased the money for the rest of his career. Over the next decade, he'd played in Ireland, America, South Africa, Scotland, and in the lower reaches of English football. Whilst playing abroad, Best stole money to fund drinking sessions and spent Christmas 1984 behind bars in England for drink driving, and continued to have a difficult relationship with alcohol right up until his death in 2005. It is a case of how much better Best could have been had he remained focused on his career, not that his antics ever truly detracted from his legendary status. 6. 1860 Munich. To Germany now, and it's Bayern Munich's former stadium sharers 1860 Munich. Die Löwen were one of their nation's biggest sides when the Bundesliga was created in 1960, winning the 1966 edition as well as winning the Pokal in 1964 and finishing as runners-up in the 1965 Cup Winners' Cup, losing to West Ham in the final. But that was truly their peak, as poor performances saw them bounce between the first and second tiers, whilst in 1982, financial problems forced them to drop down to the amateur levels of German football. Although they would make it back to the top, even qualifying for the Champions League in 2000, this again was done at the detriment of club finances, with 1860 being coerced into selling their half of the new Allianz Arena, built in cooperation with Bayern for the 2006 World Cup. Bought out by Georgian investor Hassan Abdullah Ismek in 2011, leading fans to believe their club would be financially secure, but this was again not the case. Ismek's refusal to provide the money for a playing licence saw 1860 demoted to the regional leagues of German football in 2017 and are currently settled in the 3rd division, a huge low for a club steeped in history. 5. Adrian Mutu. Adrian Mutu was set to be Romanian football's next great player. Signed by Inter Milan as a 19-year-old before coming to prominence at Parma in 2002. Signed by Roman Abramovich as part of his first Chelsea spending spree and seemed worth the £60 million after scoring 4 goals in his first 3 matches in the Premier League. But just a year after his arrival, he tested positive for cocaine, banned for 7 months, and his club sued him for breach of contract. This led to FIFA stepping in and ordering Mutu to pay Chelsea over £15 million, the largest fine ever given by FIFA. This wasn't the only time Mutu would be banned due to drug use, as when at Fiorentina he was banned for a year after failing another test. Mutu was even permanently excluded from his international duties after posting images of his boss as Mr. Bean on Facebook, depriving him of an opportunity to score the 1 goal that would top Georgi Hagi's 35 as the highest for his country. Whilst it's hard to dispute that his career was a good one, it will always be tarnished and remembered for what happened in England. 4. Hungary. It feels hard to believe at times, but Hungary used to have the best national team in the world. English fans will know they were the first side to topple the 3 Lions at Wembley, winning 6-3, with this result coming in the midst of a 4-year unbeaten run in which they scored 220 goals in just 51 matches. With names like Hidokuti, Kotsis, and of course Puskás, the Magyars were on top of the world entering the 1954 World Cup. However, they fell in the final to West Germany and have failed to reach those heights since. The Soviets moved into Hungary, forcing many of the nation's stars to move to Spain. While still competitive, they weren't the threat they had been, and then the fall of communism is blamed for their recent struggles, having not qualified for a major tournament since 1986. Throughout the 90s and noughties, football lost its collective identity, resources were diverted elsewhere, and attendances dwindled to a few thousand at best. In even more recent days though, they are having something of a resurgence, even qualifying for the knockout rounds of Euro 2016. But this is a far cry from where they once were over half a century ago. 3. Arda Turan. Arguably the best player Turkey have ever produced, it'll be difficult to find as fast a downhill for any player still in the game as Arda Turan's. The Istanbul-born midfielder made his name for Galatasaray before becoming the most expensive Turkish player ever following a €12 million move to Atletico Madrid. And as is the case in Spain, his talents didn't go unnoticed, and he was picked up by Barcelona for almost triple that fee. A good squad player for 2 years, but not outstanding for the Blaugrana, Turan dropped out of the squad and was sent to Istanbul Başakşehir on loan in 2017-18, where he remained until the end of last season. And it didn't get off to a good start. In May of that campaign, he pushed an assistant referee, picking up a 16-game ban. Then came the nightclub incident in October 2018, where after getting into a fight with a Turkish pop star, breaking his nose, arrived at hospital later with a gun. Turan ultimately got a 32-month suspended jail sentence for his troubles. Now 33, Turan, who has 100 caps, hasn't kicked a ball since last year, but has recently re-signed with Galatasaray, hoping to get his career back on track. 2. Stade de Reims. In an alternate footballing reality, the preeminent force in not just French football but in the sport as a whole would be Stade de Reims. This club, based some 150 kilometres east of Paris, took part in the first ever European Cup final in 1956, where they faced Real Madrid. But despite being 2-0 up within the first 10 minutes, they fell to Los Blancos 4-3, who also promptly signed their best player, Raymond Kopa. Although they would again reach and ultimately lose the European Cup final in 1959, Stade de Reims' fortunes began to take a turn for the worst, as over the following decades they developed into something of a yo-yo club before going bankrupt in 1991. Re-emerging in the 6th tier, Reims would go on to spend the following decade in the amateur divisions. And it's only really been in recent years that they've established themselves as a top-tier club once again, having been as low as the 3rd tier as recently as 2016 and only regaining promotion to Ligue 1 in 2018. In fact, the curtail French season meant the club ended the campaign in 6th position, just good enough for a first return to continental football since 1963. 1. Ronaldinho. Renowned as one of the most skillful players of all time, Ronaldinho made his name at PSG, before becoming a Ballon d'Or winner whilst at Barcelona in 2005. However, despite his prowess at the business end of the pitch, his work ethic cost him a place in Pep Guardiola's revolution of the Blaugrana. Shipped off to Milan before returning to Brazil and having brief stints in Mexico and India, before ultimately retiring in 2018 at 38, a long way from his glory days. Whilst at Milan, Ronaldinho did find form, but it's believed that being overlooked for the Brazil 2010 World Cup squad was a sign his career was winding down at just 30 years old. And it's hardly been a happy retirement for him. Ronaldinho's first notable brush with the law came in July 2019, when 57 of his properties were confiscated along with his passports for building a fishing platform on a protected river. Then earlier this year, he was imprisoned for using a fake passport to get into Paraguay. Used to being the star wherever he goes, that didn't change behind bars, as Ronaldinho led his team to victory in the prison futsal tournament, although that's a far cry from the World Cup he won 18 years ago. So those were our 10 footballing declines that have shocked the world, but have we missed out anyone else or clubs? Let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video and want to see more, then click on screen right now, and as always guys, don't forget to like and subscribe.